Hi friends, welcome to this latest episode of the Nationalist View. We have with us a very special guest, Colonel Miri Eisin. Colonel Eisin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me again.
Colonel Eisin is joining us from Israel, and we are going to talk about the ongoing Iran war. Colonel Eisin, though she does not need any introduction, but just for the sake of it, I'll briefly introduce our guest. Colonel Miri Eisin is an internationally recognized expert on intelligence, security, and the geopolitical landscape, especially when it comes to Middle East. Uh, she's a retired colonel and from the Israeli Defense Forces, and she served for over 20 years in a variety of high-profile intelligence and operational roles, including as the foreign media advisor to Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert in 2006. Colonel Aisin, my first question is, everybody is talking about it, and especially as the information warfare is going on. So, what is actually Israel's real end game in this conflict? Is it simply degrading Iran's military and nuclear capabilities, or is there a serious expectation that the conflict could trigger, regime change in Tehran?
I hope it brings regime change, but for the moment, what I want is for us to be defining the rules and not the Islamic regime of Iran. And I think that when we look at what's going on right now, the fact that Israel initiated, Israel is preventing, of course, together with the United States, that Israel is initiating and preventing against the Islamic regime's main proxy, Hezbollah, in Lebanon, that's the aim. Meaning we define the rules of the game and not the terror regime and the terror regime's proxy. And that's an achievable aim. That's not something, I think we've already achieved that aim. We've changed the rules of the game.
How would you rate Iran's response so far? From your perspective, is Iran holding back for a larger escalation, or are we already seeing the limit of Iran's military capability?
Iran is a country that built its capabilities over a very long time. And the whole idea also with the proxies is that they would never have to defend themselves. They were constantly doing that so that at the most, we, Israel, would attack, let's say, the proxy Hezbollah in Lebanon or the Houthis in Yemen and not in Iran proper. This is already, in that sense, the second very large high-scale operation against Iran, June of 2025 and now. And in both of them, we've seen clearly that the Islamic regime does not know how to defend itself in its own land, that it does not invest in defending itself. It built the proxies for that. So on the one hand, we have absolute air superiority, but there's another side to it. They built a very large arsenal of missiles, of launchers, and of drones that all of us are seeing. And they've been using this very large arsenal both against Israel, but for goodness sakes, they've been using it against every single country in the Middle East. So here I would say they're showing that they have an arsenal. They fire drones, missiles, short range, long range, exact and non-exact against every single Gulf country. If I go by map, Oman, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, Iraq, keep on going. They fired against Jordan. They fired against Turkey, against Cyprus, against Azerbaijan. Like you look at the range of what they've done. And so they have those capabilities. And yet they do not have the capability to defend their own skies. So we're really searching one by one for the launchers, for the missiles, for the installations, the storage facilities, and also now the R&D, research and development, and the places where they actually make the different weapons.
There's been a lot of talk about, dirty bombs, a possibility of Iran using dirty bombs. So how do you, assess the status? What is Iran's status when it comes to, the stockpile of enriched uranium, especially after the recent strikes? There were strikes in the 12-day war also, but Operation Rising Lion. But now, so after the recent strikes, what would it take to, has it been degraded completely, their capability to, make even a dirty bomb? And and what would it take to completely, degrade or decimate Iran's capability to become a nuclear power? Has it already happened? Or is there still a scope that something more needs to be done?
It's such a core question. Would they do a dirty bomb? And can they do a dirty bomb? Those are two different questions. Would they? To me, that's asking about the rationality of this regime. Is the most important thing on its priorities, both to annihilate Israel, to destroy Israel, and so you could do it through a dirty bomb any way you can? And I'm going to hope not, but I can't be sure. So I need to prevent that. As I said, I don't want them defining the rules of the game. Can they do a dirty bomb? That's the residue, if I can call it, of June of 2025, that clearly the different nuclear sites were attacked. However, it was also clear that none of the nuclear sites were completely destroyed. And the biggest question was about the nuclear fissile material, the material itself. So that's part of the quest that's happening right now. Israel and the US have absolute air superiority. So now it has to do with your intelligence capability, with your understanding where they've brought that material, what they are going to do. So I know I haven't answered your question. It's a very scary one. I want to hope that they're rational and they wouldn't do it, but could they do it? Yes. And right now, I think that the Israeli and certainly the US actions are based on their capability and not on their rationale. And so we look for that and you seek for that and you're trying to get to it. And in the meantime, Iran wants to stop the war. That's their main aim. Why do they want to stop the war? Partially because they don't want us to get to that material.
So let's, everybody knows that Iran has been, kind of targeting Israel and also, rest of the world also through its proxies, like Houthis and, even you would say, they also supported Hamas and then Hezbollah is there, but primarily basically Houthis and Hezbollah. And after October 7th, Israel did degrade the capabilities of Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. So, but where do they stand now? Because we see, a barrage of rockets coming from Hezbollah and Israel retaliating by, attacking in Lebanon. So, how strong is still basically this so-called, evil axis of so-called resistance, which has Hezbollah and Houthis primarily?
So the Islamic regime of Iran invested in the proxies. They invested in the nuclear, we just discussed that. They invested in the missiles, we mentioned that. Now we're talking about the proxies. So first, and it's important for me to say also to an audience in India, that Hezbollah is a term which is not only about Lebanese Arabic speaking Hezbollah. Hezbollah, there is an Iraqi Hezbollah. The Houthis are a different proxy with a different name, but there are Hezbollahs in Southeast Asia. I don't even want to think about Southwest Asia, and I'm saying that because the term Hizb Allah means party of God, and essentially what it is I am committed to the theology of the Islamic regime of Iran, and so it's all over the place. The Lebanese Hezbollah was what I'm going to call, and I smile in a cynical way, it was the Islamic regime of Iran's prized student. They were the best of the best, which means that the Islamic regime invested in them in training, in money, in weapons. Not only that, but Lebanese Hezbollah became the ones who go to train the Houthis how to fire missiles, the Iraqi Hezbollah how to fire drones, and there are Lebanese Hezbollah operatives all over the world. I mentioned Southwest or Southeast Asia near the Indian continent, but there's lots of them also on the American continent, Central America, South America, all over the place. I come back to my arena. We want to change the rules of the game. Changing the rules of the game so that the Islamic regime and its proxies are not the ones who get to define any rules means that Israel, in the aftermath of Lebanese Hezbollah joining in with the Iranian response right now in this high intensity conflict, Israel is on the initiative, preventing and preempting against Lebanese Hezbollah. But I want to be clear, I don't know the exact data because sometimes it's US and sometimes it's Israel, but Iraqi Hezbollah has attacked against U.S. places, I think mainly in Iraq, and both Israeli and U.S. air capabilities have attacked Iraqi Hezbollah. And the same will go for the Houthis. We have not yet seen clear cut the Houthis joining in. To me, it's a question of time. And again, I think, and what I hope for, is that not just Israel and the US, but that we, the Western, not Western, the democratic countries, the countries that see these horrific terror organizations for what they are, that we go on the initiative against them and not that they get to fire and do whatever they want. The last point is that a lot of these terror organizations, the Houthis, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hezbollah in Iraq, etc., what they do in their terror activities are against international shipping routes, international trade routes. Look at what's happening right now with the Hormuz Strait, where you can't export oil, gas, or any kind of trade there. That's an international shipping route. So we say the proxies and we say terror, but the Islamic regime in Iran is a terror regime in itself. It's doing a terrorist activity. It is closing an international shipping route that's international waters, and they're just doing so to use that in their terror mode to try to survive, because that's what they want to do. They want to survive.
Colonel Eisen, my last question is because in almost every podcast which I've done with you, we have discussed this question. Uh, how about the information warfare? So, how do you see the information war panning out in context of the current conflict which is going on? Uh, Especially, I want you to respond to and give your perspective on a particular narrative that is being pushed. And this narrative is that the US and Israel had underestimated Iran and their strategy isn't working out that well. So, is it part of a propaganda war, and who all are pushing it? Especially, it is in the Western media and social media space also. We see this kind of narrative being pushed. So, who are actually basically pushing it? And so, if I can get your perspective on this.
Such an important aspect, the information war, and here I am talking with you. Iran from February 28th. I mean, we're already 16, whatever, how many days we are into this. From February 28th, have been pushing, I'm not even going to call it fake news, absolute lies. And when I say absolute lies, that shows the basic weakness both of the regime itself and of the ideology that they stand for, meaning not only are they trying to annihilate and do the different aspects of terrorism that they do worldwide, they actually build an entire information mainly based on AI tools that you have nowadays so that a person in India can turn on their social media, they can go somewhere and they're going to go, wow, Tel Aviv has been decimated. Hi, everyone. I'm in Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv has not been decimated. But to me, what's even further than that is that they believe their lies and they want you to believe their lies. Now, when they believe their own lies, they think they're doing really well. So they're going to go out and say, we're strong, we're doing well. Look, we've killed thousands. They've said until now that they've killed thousands of Israelis, that they've decimated Tel Aviv and Haifa. They've said that they've killed hundreds of Israeli troops, hundreds of US troops, that they've downed planes. Every single one of those fake news makes them feel stronger. And that's like, to me, that's part of the spiral of their fall. When you promote and send out erroneous, fake lies, you're going to be caught out. Israel and the US have absolute air superiority over Iran. We haven't managed to close down the engines that send out these fake lies. Now, right now, I want us to be hunting missiles and launchers and nuclear capabilities and ATMs, anti-tank missiles, more important. But most definitely, the battlefield of how do you counter a lie? The basic idea of propaganda is that if you repeat a lie as many times, people at the end believe it. I have to be rude and cruel to myself for a moment and say that if I could call it, the ground zero of hate propaganda is anti-Semitism. It's been around for, 1700, if not 2000 years. It's very challenging. And I say that because that's hate, lie, propaganda. And when you come back to the 21st century and you go, shouldn't people know better? Shouldn't they be checking that? Iran invests with their proxies an enormous amount of capability, and it doesn't cost a lot. It isn't something where you're building a missile or a launcher or an underground cavern to hold it in. This is the information war, sending it out, and you're sending it out to an audience, and this is the worst part of them, that's willing to believe it. And I call it out. I call it out for what it is. Go into the Israeli sites. We are an open democracy with lots of challenges, but we're an open democracy. We're here. We've had over the last 2 weeks and a bit, as this continues, we've had at the moment less than 20 casualties in this world, 20 in this war, 20, okay? And of those, 9 were in a bomb shelter, and the bomb shelter took a direct hit. Could it be worse? Civilians, kids, teenagers in a bomb shelter. And the other ones, when I have an alert, I go into a safe place, and everybody, that was a bomb shelter that was hit, and that's why it's so scary, because you go to the bomb shelter to be safe, but it was a direct hit and the door was open. What can I say? That happens, karma. But when you're talking about everybody else, yes, missiles have gotten through. Not all have been intercepted. But the war, the lies, the investment in showing Israel being destroyed, don't believe it for a moment. That's an integral part, both of the Islamic regime, of the proxies, and I could go further in that sense, because that information warfare is a very strong component throughout the world today.
Thank you, Colonel Eisin, for joining us, especially during these challenging times and taking time out from your busy schedule. And this is a rapidly developing story, and it's a momentous event which is happening in the history of recent history of the human mankind. So we tend to follow this and also bring in perspective. As you rightly said, especially during this period of information warfare, it is very important to get the right facts and the right perspective, and that is what we are trying to do. And thank you so much for experts like you who come on our show and help us with bringing in this perspective through factual information. And thank you so much, and we'll be back soon with another conversation. Thank you, Colonel Lyson, for joining.
Thank you so much, and that everybody should be safe.